Welcome to the Future of Customer Service podcast. We are lucky enough today to have with us Marcelo Lewin, who's going to tell us about headless content management. Marcelo, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much. I got to say, I'm lucky to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. You were also on my podcast, right? On headlesscreator.com.
Right.
And that was a great conversation. People really loved it. We talked about AI and chatbots. People should definitely check that out.
That was amazing. So thank you for now coming here to our podcast. And we have a lot of questions and we are very
Totally.
intrigued about the concept of headless. But first, would you, Marcelo, tell us about you?
Sure. Let's see. God, I'm so old. I don't think I should start way at the beginning because it's going to take too long for that intro. But I've been in technology in web mainly. That's where I really started back in 97, literally when the internet was just starting out, I was working way back then for Toyota Motor Corp, the corporation here in Southern California. And I saw that change going from your regular network to the internet. And I jumped on that. And man, I'm so glad I did that because that just changed my life completely. And it's been a wild ride ever since. I've gone through the .com era, the .bomb era when everything crashed, then the resurgence. And there's so many things that have transcended from way back then to today. It's wonderful to see how the web is today, how people use it, how people take it for granted. I love that, the fact that people take it for granted, because that means it's just part of your daily life, right? But back then, I remember driving on the freeway with my wife and seeing a sign on the a billboard on the freeway, and it said something.com. I forgot what it was, but I'm like, look, it's the internet. I mean, back then you wouldn't see that kind of stuff, right? My wife thought I was crazy, but now she doesn't. Well, she still thinks I'm crazy, but yeah, so I've been with technology for a long time, switched many iterations. I've always been with content creation. I love creating stuff. Content meaning anything, right? It could be podcasts, videos, live streams, code. I used to be a coder. To me, that's all creation, right? And delivering something and seeing people either consume that content or use it to some sort of benefit. So that is kind of like my, quick wrap up of my many years in this world.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marcelo. So when the first time I heard the word headless, I couldn't help but think about one of the scenes of Harry Potter, when one of these ghosts hanging around with his head hanging out. So, but I think that's a lot more than that. So maybe could you tell us what is headless CMS, which is content management system, I'm assuming,
Right.
and how is that different from regular or older
Like
generation CMSs?
Yeah, definitely. I had the same reaction you did, to be honest with you, when I heard headless, because I got put into a project saying, look, we're looking for a headless CMS. So I'm like, that sounds illegal. I don't want to deal with that. It's like, are we cutting people? I literally didn't understand what that meant. Prior to that, I was into this traditional, or the monolith CMS, right? I ran a development team. We created a monolith CMS. But when headless came along and I was asked to jump into that, it intrigued me. And then the light bulb went on and I'm like, my gosh, this is the way it should be. This is how we should have done it from the beginning. And if you think about it, it's a very simple concept, but it took all these years to get to the simple concept. And the big difference between a headless CMS and a traditional or monolith CMS is that the head is not there. And what do we mean by the head? The head is your delivery channels. That's why they call it omnichannel delivery. The displaying your content on a website, displaying your content on a mobile app, displaying your content, or not displaying, but saying your content, let's say on an IoT device, right? Those are all the heads, right? Those are the delivery channels. What the headless CMS does, it separates that delivery channel from the backend, from the content infrastructure, from the authoring tool, and allows a developer to basically pick any framework they want, work in any technology they want, to deliver the content that is stored in the headless CMS. So it really, you're going into the API first microservices kind of realm where you're decoupling all of these things so you can use the best of breed of what you want for the delivery channel, for the back end, for search, e-commerce. I mean, we're going to talk about all that, but you can pick all that. So that's the big difference, is we're going from a monolith to more of a API first microservices decoupled system, allowing you to deliver the content anywhere.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because traditionally, content management systems, and I remember Vignette back in time.
I remember
right?
that. That's an old one, yeah.
These guys. So it's all about putting the content for one specific website that you had in mind. No?
Exactly.
And what's going on now is like, well, you don't know what that content is going to be. It's going to be different channels or heads. Now we learned that. That's amazing. So that's all about. And tell me, what do you, there's headlesscreator.com. It's a company or an initiative that you are working on. What is this? Could you tell us more about your project?
Yeah, sure. So whenever I become passionate about anything, I immediately create, like you're doing, the live stream, podcasts, tutorials, all those kinds of things. And like I mentioned before, I became very passionate about headless because it just made sense. So I started creating a lot of content, but it got to the point where the content grew, the site grew. So then I decided to create the website called headlesscreator.com. And it's basically a place where you can go for free to learn all about a variety of headless CMSs. And there are a lot of them, from Contentful to Content Stack to Graph CMS to Agility CM. I mean, there's tons, literally there's tons. In fact, I'm putting a spreadsheet together of so many that there are to compare. But it's a place where you can learn. It's like a school, basically, where you learn how to administer a headless CMS, how to develop for a headless CMS, and how to create content in it. So it's focused on authors, administrators, and developers. And it's 100% free because it's thanks to all the sponsors that they help me keep the site free. So the content keeps growing. The sponsors keep coming on and supporting the site. So it's a win-win for pretty much everybody.
Oh, that's a beautiful project. And I encourage
it's a passion project,
so the listeners now to go to headlesscreator.com. That's an amazing place to learn.
And by the way, it's early morning here, so I hope you don't find this rude, but I got to have some coffee.
That's good. That's you look. I'm not. I mean, you are smart, but with your coffee, you look even smarter.
It's the glasses. If I would take the glasses, it goes away. Yeah.
That's a good one. So listen, I was doing some research about the idea of headless, and of course there is the headless CMS, and then I found something interesting, which is the headless e-commerce, and I was wondering what is this? What does that mean in the space of e-commerce?
Right. It's the same thing as a headless CMS, right? In terms that a headless CMS decouples the front end from that back end. Headless e-commerce does the same thing. You're not stuck to templates that are provided to show whatever template designed for your products come with it, right? In a headless e-commerce, you can now mix a headless CMS with a headless e-commerce and then mix both of them up, because a lot of what you can do today is not only bring in products from your headless e-commerce, but then also bring in content to augment those products, because a lot of commerce is going towards content-driven commerce, right? Where you learn about certain things and then you end up buying it. So use a headless CMS to augment your headless commerce products with content. You can mix it all up, and then on the front end, you can deliver it however you want to, whether it's on your mobile app, whether it's on a website, again, whether it's through IoT devices, maybe in the future, VR, AR, maybe. I mean, it's been done where people are delivering content to a virtual reality headset, right? So it's the exact same concept. I did want to clarify one thing, or not clarify, but add to what's really important with headless is that you're not only separating the front end, but you're separating design from content. The big problem with the traditional CMSs or the monolith CMSs is that you had design and content all mixed up together. The problem with that then this goes towards something I know you obviously are passionate about, is chatbots and AI. But when you have design with content, your content is not intelligent. You can't have relationships between different pieces of content, right? Like a blog article is written by an author, but if you mix up HTML, it's just an HTML tag that says it's the author name. You don't really know it's an author, right? But when you separate the design completely from the content, now you can add metadata to this content and make it intelligent. And I think that's where the real benefit of headless is when you're focusing on your content and its intent. And I know we're going to talk more about that, is when it becomes really, really powerful. And that's a big thing where people coming from a traditional CMS, including myself, like I mentioned, it's hard to grasp at the beginning because you always want to say, well, no, I want to make this word red. So let me make it word. Let me make this word red. But then if you really think about it, it's like, why are you making it red? What is that? What is the meaning? What is the intent behind the red word? Is it important? Oh, okay. So you want to highlight words as important. Now we're adding metadata to words. Now we know that these words are important, not that they're just red, because tomorrow the important word may be blue on a different delivery channel, right? So that's really important. I wanted to clarify that. And that applies also to e-commerce, right? Where you're focusing on the content as opposed to the design.
Totally. And as you were telling all these stories, I kind of, I couldn't help but remember stuff like XML, right? That was back in time was a big thing. And then there was, okay, HTML and then CSS, trying to separate format from content. And then the idea of semantic web, that basically
Right.
you would develop your content using XML, not HTML. So it looks like that all these concepts have been, cooking for a long time until this idea now of the headless CMS, which is amazing. And my question is, which channels? How can you use a headless CMS to embrace your omni-channel strategy?
I think so. With the headless CMS, you start out with a content model, and the content model is what defines your content. Now, when you think about content modeling, when you create the representation of your content in your headless CMS, you got to think about not just, okay, we have a web page and we need this blog article to appear on the web page, or we need this product to appear here. It will appear there, but you need to think about the product or the blog article itself or whatever you're modeling, and think of the intent, and think of not just the intent behind it, but where do you want to see it in the future? Because right now you have it in a blog article. Later on, you may want this piece of information. Let's take, for example, a knowledge-based article. Many websites have apps, and right, you create like for your you have, I'm sure you have a huge knowledge base, right? So they can run Inbenta properly. So you have a knowledge-based article, and you write this article that answers a few questions. Well, yes, you want to display it right there in that knowledge-based article, in the help, right? help.inbenta.com or whatever it may be for you, right? You want to display it there. But what about inside the actual engine? Do you want to display something there in context? What about if you have a mobile app? Do you want to display it there? What about a tooltip? If you have a tooltip and you want to give more information, would you like to relate that tooltip to this knowledge-based article? So you can see how when you're modeling your content for Headless CMS, you shouldn't think of just the one delivery channel that you're trying to model, which is normally going to be your website, your web page. You want to think of, where else can we use this information, and what are the relationships between this piece of content and other piece of content? Do we want to relate a knowledge-based how-to article with a knowledge-based FAQ article? Do we want to relate a tooltip with any of these articles? So then you start building this web of relationships. And that's when you start thinking omni-channel delivery. You go beyond the obvious, which is your website, your web page, whatever you're modeling, and you think of all these relationships. And on top of that, you think about, are we going to integrate this content? Do we want to feed this knowledge-based article to customer support so they can help our customers, right? So now you're integrating this piece of content. So that's why it becomes so important not to tie design to that piece of content, because design means nothing when you're integrating it into Salesforce and delivering it to your customer support agent, or when you're displaying it on a mobile app or IoT, you know what I mean? So that's when you start thinking about all of these omni-channel deliveries, is by thinking first about what is the meaning of this piece of content and how do we expose it and where do we expose it?
Totally, because and then you talk about knowledge articles, right? And you know that Inbenta is very much into knowledge and providing relevant answers for user questions, which at the end of the day is all about content. So the question here is, when it comes to customer support, that I'm assuming that this idea of a headless can actually help building a knowledge that is been created to satisfy user questions, to provide us as much as possible as self-service and quick and relevant answers. So I'm assuming that's going to be something very relevant in the space of customer support. So what is your experience or your vision on how a headless and let's say knowledge-based or knowledge-centric customer support, how do you see these two dots connecting?
So I think the biggest frustration in, let's say, when you go into a chatbot or it provides the wrong information, or worse, it provides outdated information. So when it comes to a headless CMS, one of the key concepts besides separating design from content is also single source of truth. By creating these relationships, if you say this blog article is written by Marcelo Lewin, Marcelo Lewin is an author, it's an author content type. When I create 100 articles, I relate it to just that one Marcelo Lewin entry. I can update the content, Marcelo Lewin, whatever else, my bio, whatever, and then all the 100 articles that is using my name automatically gets the main information, right? Apply that to an FAQ. An FAQ article has 20 questions. One of the questions is, how do you manage users in Inbenta, right? Well, you create that as a single source of truth question, meaning that there's one entry that says, how do you manage users in Inbenta? Here's how you manage users in Inbenta. Now you use that FAQ in 1,000 other knowledge-based articles, how-to articles, whatever you want to. So now you change how you manage users. Well, you just go to that one entry, and wherever else it's being used, it will be automatically updated. That means that maintenance in content is much, much simpler in a headless CMS because it supports single source of truth. What does that translate into? Whenever I'm searching as a user in your knowledge base or in a chatbot or whatever, I'm always going to get the latest, most updated information. And what I find horrible is going into a place that gives you an answer, and then you go into the app and it goes, "What? This has nothing to do with what it's telling me. It's completely off." Because in the traditional way, where you don't have single source of truth, where you would create that FAQ question 1,000 times, you would have to update it in 1,000 different places. So I think that's one way of making customer support much better. A different way is where you can actually start relating, like I was mentioning before, information, because now you have relationships of FAQ and tooltips and knowledge-based articles and everything else, blog articles. You can not only say, hey, here is a piece of information that may answer your question, but here's some others that you may think will answer the question because it has that. So I think that's another way that it could help by exposing the right content at the right time to the right user.
Absolutely. That I love this idea of centralized source of truth, and probably that has happened to you, right? So you go to this
Right.
website, and there is and you look at the website. There's a homepage that say, "Hey, we announced our new offer for XYZ," right? And then there's a chatbot, and you click on the chatbot and say, "Hey, I can help you with anything." And you say, "Well, what about this offer on XYZ?"
Right.
So can you rephrase that? What are you talking about? Is I can
Exactly.
see in another place. I mean, I'm not even mixing channels here. It's the same channel, but it looks like the chatbot is disconnected from the website, which is really frustrating for and shocking, I guess, for users, right? Because they're and I'm assuming that's one of the symptoms of this disconnection when you have several places and several editing systems and putting all that together. It's
Exactly.
impossible without some kind of headless strategy, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So, and then there's the moment where you say, okay, so I have those content, but Inbenta is all about relevance, search, semantic search, artificial intelligence, natural language processing. So, what is your vision about how that content could be found? How is semantic search and the idea of semantics, playing a role here in the idea of a headless strategy?
Yeah, totally. Well, with semantic search, the key is intent, context, and relationships between words, right? And that's how when I type in something in Google, it doesn't take into account just the words that I typed in, but what is my intent behind it? What is the context around those words? And what are the relationships with the other things I've done, right? To bring up the proper result, which normally it gives me what I want. Well, those words that I just used are exactly the same words in a headless CMS, right? You want to focus your content on intent. You want to have context. And then remember, I kept talking about relationships between different content types. That's all helps with semantic web, right? Because you are storing intelligent content, and semantic web uses intelligent content to provide the proper results. So I think it's just a perfect match between them.
Yes, that makes sense. Like, okay, I have my content, and now I can deliver it anywhere, and I have an intelligent system that is able to find that content. Now, about conversation, right, and chatbots. If you look at the tools out there, and Inbenta is no different, right? There's a place where basically they say, hey, what is the answer for that intent, right? You have to program. At the end of the day, chatbots are based on pre-built answers, and the artificial intelligence is just about trying to guess what is the best answers given a specific question. So my question here is, how could chatbots and conversational AI benefit of the idea of headless?
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit on chatbot AI. You're the pro, and people should go to that podcast that we did, because that's not me. And even chatbots, you're the pro. So I don't even want to come through as like I know a lot about chatbots. But at the end of the day, because you are separating content from design, and you're adding intent to content, that's what chatbot is all about, right? Is having a conversation and understanding not what they typed, but what they want. And you can match that up with a properly designed content model. At the end of the day, with any headless CMS project, it all starts with a content model that will support your data, your content needs today into the future, and making that content intelligent. So if you design your content model properly, then you can expose all that information through a chatbot, let's say through the conversation. And I've seen actually chatbot APIs that you can create the conversation within a headless CMS. So you're actually the author, because at the end of the day, this is the other thing that I think people need to understand. Headless CMS is very much associated with developers. Oh, a developer. At the end of the day, in a headless CMS, authors are the ones that live with this, and authors are the ones that manage content. So you want to empower your authors to manage this content. In a chatbot, you're going to have conversations. In the conversation, and you brought up a lot of this during our interview, have some sort of attitude, the company attitude, and right, and the way they speak and the way they express. But that's all handled by some sort of author, right? Somebody has to write some of that stuff. In a headless CMS, you can empower the author to be able to manage these conversations and the outcomes based on intents. Like if they ask for this, and the intent is this, then show all of these things, or answer in this manner. And you could model all that in a content model for headless CMS, and then expose it through your chatbot. So I think it's really perfectly made for that.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, because obviously you're the
yes.
chatbot king. So
That's the thing, right? We have some customers that they say, "Hey, we love Inbenta. The way you make the artificial intelligence easy by implementing this pre-trained linguistic model. So our customers don't have to invest time in training with utterances and examples and all that. But then they say, "Hey, my content is in, let's say, Salesforce, right? And I want the chatbot to use that content." And it's like, well, wait a minute. Our tool is designed in a way that you edit the content there, but you're starting to see that, well, they have another tool, in this case, Salesforce, which I believe if there is a head match, probably that would be. So it's not the content, but it does highlight the need to have that one source, have authors working in one environment and say, okay,
exactly.
that is for the help side, this is for the website, this is for the chatbot, and have only one place. So we see that more and more. So that's my opinion, is that vendors of conversational AI will start to have thinking very soon. We are already doing that, right? And on how can we basically decouple the logic of the conversation and the logic of the content and the answers from the authoring tool and being also multi-channel. So I believe that's my personal opinion. That's coming, and at Inbenta we are already working on that.
So a headless chatbot.
And of sorts, yes. That sounds more terrifying for some reason.
I know it does, right?
And so we see now headless CMS, headless e-commerce. What else can go headless?
Well, pretty much everything that you want to decouple the front end from the back end, right? So search, I think Algolia is a perfect example where they're a headless search, right? So you can pass information to it, it returns information, you display the information however you want. So really anything can go headless, because what it's doing, it's decoupling the logic in the content from the back end and the design, as we said, and from the front end delivery channel. That way you can expose it wherever you want. Again, it's omni-channel, omni-device delivery.
Got it.
Yeah.
And it is related, right? So the idea of headless and API is somehow related as well, right? So and there are now stuff like GraphQL, right? A way to kind of organize APIs, and we saw the RESTful and then GraphQL. How is all that connecting with the idea of headless?
Most headless CMSs right now will offer you, they give you an API. And an API, most people know, an application programming interface, which is a way to get into the content that's stored in that headless CMS. All of them will let you get to that via REST. But many of them also give you GraphQL, which was an initiative started by Facebook many years ago to speed up the delivery of content into mobile devices, right? So that it would load up much quickly, and you would ask exactly what you want, and it would return exactly what you want without having to change your endpoints. Like in REST, if you want a different kind of piece of information, you have to create a new endpoint. In GraphQL, and an endpoint is a location where you say, hey, go there and give me all the users. Well, it may return all the users with all the information about that user, but really all I want is give me all the users' first name. I don't need their last name, their address, and all that kind of stuff, because I'm just going to say, hello, John. Well, GraphQL allows you to say, hey, give me all the users' first name. That's it. And it'll return all the users' first name. When in REST, yes, you could do it, but it requires programming. And REST is kind of tied to that front end, because depending on what you want on the front end, you tell REST what you need. Exactly. Where GraphQL is more generic. It says, just give me what I want, it returns it, and that's it, and you're done. So many people or many headless CMSs now have the ability to go against or to get the information via the GraphQL, which is just another way of getting that information.
It's an API, but instead of like, okay, I'm going to give you all the information because that's how the API has been designed. Exactly. It's like, well, you tell me what. So QL comes for query language, right?
Right.
You and I.
And graph is an important term because it's really the relationship between all a user's graph, right? Is all the content related to this user. And that's why it's important. See, we go back to relationships, which is the basics of a headless CMS with content modeling. All of this ties together at the end of the day.
Correct, absolutely. So that's fascinating. So I'm wondering, tell me what do you think is the future that awaits us in all this related to the headless technology and the headless CMSs?
Sure. So I'll tell you what I would like to see the future to be, since I don't have this magic lamp that will tell me. I wish I did. But one of the benefits of the old CMSs, the monolith, was that the front end, was very easy for authors to manage content. With a headless CMS, the authoring tool, although many people are striving forward in creating a pretty good authoring tool, is still not up to par to where the traditional monolith authoring tools are. It was very easy and very simple for an author to go in and create content, and they would see it immediately. And sometimes they would edit it. Most of the time they edit it right on the page they see, right? With headless CMS, is because you are disconnecting the front end. Whenever you want to do any kind of live editing, you have to involve a developer for that. That connects that front end to your back end, and then it allows users. So what I'm hoping in the future is that we find, because with headless CMSs, we found we're about 90 to 95% there with content infrastructure, developer framework, all of that is there for developers. But for the authors, I think we've got a while to go to make the experience for an author, which at the end of the day, we got to remember, these are the people that live with that headless CMS and the content day in and day out every day, right? The developer's done, they move on to something else, but the author has to live with this. We have to improve that authoring experience and make it where it's not so abstract, because, and I love content modeling, but sometimes you can get a bit too abstract. And from the author's perspective, they get lost. They're like, well, I don't understand the relationship between this screen and that screen. So we need to work on that authoring experience. And I'm hoping that as an industry, all the headless CMSs strive towards improving that authoring experience, so it's much easier to maintain content from the author's point of view. That's what I hope the future brings. It's a much better authoring experience. Like I said, many are moving in that direction. They're doing a great job, but we still have a while to go, I believe.
All right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a very pragmatical vision, and at the same time, really complex, because here's what you said.
Very
right?
complex.
You have the authors, but these guys know everything about content, but they're not technical, right? Then the developers that
exactly,
they know about coding, but not much about content. So how can we make these guys live together and be more productive? So that's indeed a missing part here. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally.
All right, Marcelo, I could be here asking you questions about about headless and CMSs, but we want to make that podcast kind of a consistent when it comes to length. But what I would like to ask you is, how could our audience find you? They want to know more. They want to learn about the headless CMS and talk to you. What should they do?
Yeah, definitely. Just go to headlesscreator.com. You can create an account there. You can reach me if you want. I always tell everybody Marcelo, 1L, at headlesscreator.com. Many people put 2 L's, I think, because of the Marcello thing. So, they can reach me via email, but just sign up an account. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm all Headless Creator, at Headless Creator on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just search for Marcelo Lewin and you'll find me. I've been on the web for many years, so you'll find something.
All right, Marcelo, thank you so much. And for the audience, thank you for listening to this. We have all learned a lot about CMS. I want to thank Marcelo again for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And now we are working already and preparing our next episode of the future of customer support. Thank you so much. Have a good day.